Hello, buddy. Welcome back to Tin Man's Core Channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'll be reacting to some more scary storyteller channels for y'all. And the channel I picked out to react to first is Midnight Nightmare, and the video that I'll be reacting to is called Forged Servitude College Horror Stories. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road and in the bag, shall we? Okay, here we go.
College was supposed to be the best time of my life, a time for new experiences, making friends, and building a future.
Right.
I didn't expect to find myself constantly looking over my shoulder, plagued by a creeping sense of dread. It all started in my sophomore year, when I met Ethan. Ethan was in my biology class. He was a quiet guy, always sitting in the back, rarely participating in discussions. He had an air of mystery about him, which initially piqued my curiosity. We were paired up for a lab project, and that's how we started talking. At first, he seemed perfectly normal. He was smart, knowledgeable about the subject, and seemed eager to do well in the class. As we spent more time together working on the project, I started to notice little things about him that made me uneasy. He never talked about his personal life, never mentioned friends or family. He always wore long sleeves, even when it was hot outside. There was a strange intensity in his eyes when he spoke about certain topics.
Okay, right off the bat, you think you met a nice guy to talk to, but if he's wearing long sleeves even when it's hot outside, and he don't mention any friends that he has, likes to stare, he probably is abused and mentally messed up in the mind, or he might be just a total wacko that nobody don't want to hang around with, basically. I don't know, but that is just creepy. But anyway, let's continue on with the story, see what happens next.
I brushed it off, thinking I was being paranoid. After all, everyone had their quirks. One night, we were working late in the library. The campus was eerily quiet, the usual bustle of students replaced by an almost oppressive silence. We were the only ones left in the study room, and the flickering fluorescent lights did little to dispel the growing sense of unease. "I need to grab something from my dorm," Ethan said suddenly, breaking the silence. "I'll be right back." I nodded, grateful for the brief reprieve from his intense presence. As he left, I stretched and checked my phone. It was nearly midnight. I decided to use the time to get a coffee from the vending machine down the hall. As I walked through the dimly lit corridor, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I reached the vending machine and fumbled for some change. As I waited for my coffee, I glanced around and froze. Standing at the far end of the hallway was Ethan. He was just standing there, staring at me.
Okay, right off the bat, that tells you right there that he lied. He said he was going to his room to get something, and yet he's standing right there staring at you. What a total psycho. At this point, you either try to act casual and go back to where you guys were sitting at in the study hall, or sneak out another way and head back to your dorm before this guy decides to run and chase after you. This is just wrong and creepy and terrifying all at the same time.
I forced a smile and waved, but he didn't respond. He just kept staring, his eyes unblinking. My coffee clattered into the tray, breaking the spell. I grabbed it and hurried back to the study room, my heart pounding. When I got back, Ethan was already there, sitting calmly at the table as if nothing had happened. "Did you get what you needed?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He nodded. "Yeah, let's finish this up." We worked in silence for the next hour, but I couldn't focus. Every time I looked up, Ethan was watching me with that same unsettling intensity. I finally made an excuse to leave, claiming I had an early class the next day. He didn't protest, just nodded and packed up his things. The next day in class, Ethan acted as if nothing was wrong. He greeted me with a smile, and we went over our project notes. But I couldn't forget the way he had looked at me, the way he had stood in the hallway watching. I decided to distance myself from him, but it wasn't that easy. Ethan started showing up everywhere I went, at the library, the cafeteria, even outside my dorm. He never approached me, just watched from a distance. One evening, I was sitting in my dorm room, trying to study, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Why are you avoiding me?" I felt a chill run down my spine. I had never given Ethan my number. How had he gotten it?
Oh, I guarantee you he probably talked to one of your friends and they stupidly gave your phone number to him without knowing what he was planning on doing with it. Lord have mercy. She can't help it if she's avoiding you. You're creeping her out, dude, by how you're acting. And plus, if she went to the dean of the college to talk about what he's been doing, they probably won't believe you. Just pass it off as be like, oh, he probably has a crush on you or something. But this is getting out of line here.
I didn't reply, hoping he would take the hint and leave me alone. But the texts kept coming. "Did I do something to upset you? Please talk to me. I miss our time together." The messages became more frequent, more desperate. I blocked the number, but new ones kept popping up. It was like he had an endless supply of phone numbers to use. I started feeling trapped, my once safe campus now a minefield of anxiety and fear. One night, I woke up to a noise outside my window. I lived on the ground floor, and the blinds were closed, but I could see the outline of a figure standing outside. My heart raced as I grabbed my phone and called campus security. By the time they arrived, the figure was gone. They assured me it was probably just someone passing by, but I knew better. It was Ethan. I decided to talk to my professor about it. She was understanding and promised to look into the matter. She suggested I document everything and avoid being alone as much as possible. I took her advice, but it did little to ease my fear. Ethan's behavior became more erratic. He left notes on my car, slipped them under my dorm room door. Each one was filled with increasingly disturbing messages about how we were meant to be together, how he couldn't live without me. One evening, as I was heading back to my dorm after a late study session, I noticed someone following me. My heart pounded in my chest as I quickened my pace, glancing over my shoulder to see Ethan's shadowy figure keeping pace with me. Panic set in, and I broke into a run. I could hear his footsteps pounding behind me, getting closer. I reached my dorm and fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking. Just as I managed to unlock the door, Ethan's hand grabbed my arm. I screamed, kicking and struggling to get free. My roommate, Sarah, heard the commotion and rushed to the door. She yanked it open and pulled me inside, slamming the door in Ethan's face. We called campus security, and they arrived within minutes. Ethan was gone by the time they got there, but they took my statement and promised to keep an eye out for him. I filed a restraining order, but it felt like a flimsy shield against someone as determined as Ethan. The next few days were a blur of anxiety and fear. I hardly left my dorm, relying on Sarah to bring me food and notes from class. I constantly checked the windows and doors, half expecting Ethan to appear at any moment. My grades started slipping, and I couldn't focus on anything but the threat looming over me. One night, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing. It was another unknown number. With trembling hands,
Man, I feel sorry for this girl because she's letting this creep torment her, and campus security and a restraining order is barely even helping her with this Ethan fellow. And her grades are slipping because she can't even concentrate. Like I said earlier, just go to the dean and see if they can do anything to stop him. Like, call them into their office and tell them if he keeps on messing with her, you're not only going to be suspended, but you're going to be arrested for harassing another student, basically.
I opened the message. I'm watching you. I dropped the phone and looked around the dark room, my heart pounding. I could feel his eyes on me, even though I couldn't see him. I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. I packed a bag and called my parents, explaining everything. They insisted I come home immediately. I left the campus the next morning, feeling a mix of relief and fear. My parents were supportive and understanding, but the sense of unease never fully left me. I finished the semester online, avoiding any contact with Ethan. Eventually, I transferred to a different college, hoping to leave the nightmare behind. But even now, I can't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I walk alone at night, I glance over my shoulder, half expecting to see Ethan's shadowy figure lurking in the darkness. The fear he instilled in me has left a permanent mark, a reminder of how quickly things can turn from normal to terrifying.
Dadgummit. This Ethan fellow really had the nerve to shake her up so bad to the point where she had to leave to go back home with her parents and finish that semester that she was in online, but then transfer to another university. I mean, I get it. I would do the same thing too, but golly, I'll be still blaming the campus for not doing something with Ethan because he's totally a psycho stalker. He don't take the hint that she ain't into him, so he should leave her alone. Nope. But I'm glad that she was able to get away from him. He's okay now, so let's get to story number 2.
I thought moving to college would be the start of my journey to independence and freedom. Living in a dorm, meeting new people, and experiencing life away from home sounded like an adventure. However, that sense of adventure quickly turned into a waking nightmare during my sophomore year. My roommate, Jamie, and I had been assigned a room in one of the older dorm buildings on campus. It had a certain charm with its creaky wooden floors and vintage decor, but the thick, heavy atmosphere always made me feel uneasy. We were on the third floor, in room 314, a number that would later haunt me. The first few weeks were uneventful. Jamie and I settled into our routine, going to classes, hanging out with friends, and studying late into the night.
I tell you what, there ain't no way I can live this college life at all. Because if you had to like study in the middle of the night before you go to bed, golly, I would feel like I probably might flunk or want to quit.
One evening, after a particularly grueling study session, we decided to relax and watch a movie. It was a horror movie, our favorite genre. The film was about a haunted house, filled with eerie sounds and shadowy figures lurking in every corner. We laughed at the jump scares, feeling safe in our cozy dorm room. As the movie ended, we both heard a faint scratching sound coming from outside the window. Jamie paused the movie and looked at me, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Did you hear that?" she asked. I nodded, getting up to check. Our window faced a small courtyard, with a few trees and benches scattered around. I pulled back the curtains and peered outside. Nothing. The courtyard was empty, bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight.
Oh, Lordy. Imagine you watching a haunted ghost movie and then all of a sudden you start hearing things in your college dorm. That would make you jump out of your pants for sure.
"Probably just a branch scraping against the window," I said, shrugging it off. Jamie agreed, and we resumed our night, eventually drifting off to sleep. The next morning, I woke up to find Jamie already up, staring intently at something on her desk. She had a frown on her face, and as I approached, I saw why. There was a small, crumpled piece of paper with a single word scrawled on it in jagged handwriting: "Soon." "Where did you find this?" I asked, a chill running down my spine. "It was under my pillow," she replied, her voice trembling. "Do you think someone came in here while we were sleeping?" I tried to stay calm, rationalizing that it could have been a prank by one of our friends. But deep down, I felt an overwhelming sense of unease.
You know, it could be a prank, but then you would have heard somebody walking into your room just to leave that note. So I guarantee you that there's a ghost in there messing with you.
We decided to report it to campus security, who promised to investigate and advised us to keep our door locked at all times. For a few days, everything seemed normal. We went about our routines, trying to forget about the unsettling note. But then, strange things started happening. Items in our room would be moved, drawers left open, and our belongings scattered. Jamie's favorite necklace disappeared one night, only to reappear the next day, draped over her desk lamp. One evening, as we were getting ready for bed, Jamie turned to me, her face pale. "I keep feeling like someone is watching us," she whispered. "Even when we're alone, it feels like there's someone else here."
Oh, yeah, that can be creepy because ghosts can hardly be seen sometimes. They can be invisible and just standing right in front of you, looking at you, and you won't even know. But it'd be kind of creepy if jewelry or other items went missing and then they showed up somewhere else in your room.
I nodded in agreement. I had felt it too, the prickling sensation on the back of my neck, the feeling of being watched. We double-checked the locks on the door and windows before going to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. Every creak and groan of the old building made me jump, my heart racing. A week later, the situation escalated. We were both in class when Jamie received a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of our dorm room, taken from inside. The message read, "I'm closer than you think." We rushed back to our dorm, our minds racing with fear. Campus security searched our room, but found no signs of forced entry. They installed a temporary security camera in our room and assured us they would monitor it closely. That night, we tried to sleep, but the tension in the air was palpable. Around midnight, I heard the faint sound of footsteps in the hallway. I nudged Jamie awake, and we both sat up, listening intently. The footsteps stopped outside our door, followed by a soft, rhythmic tapping.
I'm starting to think that this ain't no ghost, but he was so quick, you might as well consider him a ghost. This is creeping me out already.
Jamie grabbed her phone and texted campus security, explaining what was happening. They promised to send someone over immediately. The tapping continued, growing louder and more insistent. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, and Jamie clutched my hand, her grip tight with fear. Suddenly, the door handle jiggled, and we heard a low, menacing laugh. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead as the doorknob continued to rattle. It was as if someone was trying to get in but enjoying the torment it caused us. Then, the door burst open, and two campus security officers stormed in. They quickly searched the hallway, but found no one. The security camera footage showed a shadowy figure lingering outside our door, but the image was too blurry to identify them. Campus security stayed with us for the rest of the night, and the following day, they installed a more sophisticated security system in our room. They also increased patrols in the dorm building. Despite their efforts, the sense of dread lingered. One night, about a month later, Jamie and I were studying late. The room was quiet, save for the soft rustling of papers and the occasional click of a pen. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness. Our hearts pounded as we fumbled for our phones to use as flashlights. The power outage didn't last long, but when the lights came back on, we saw something that made our blood run cold. Written on the wall in red paint, or what we hoped was paint, was a chilling message: "I'm always watching." We immediately called campus security and the police. They took the threat seriously and conducted a thorough investigation. Forensic teams analyzed the paint and the note, but they couldn't find any fingerprints or DNA evidence. It was as if the intruder had vanished into thin air. The college administration allowed us to move to a different dorm building, and we gladly accepted. We hoped that change would bring us some peace, but the fear never fully left us. Every creak, every shadow, and every unexpected sound made us jump. I started carrying pepper spray and took self-defense classes, determined to protect myself. Jamie and I made a pact to always look out for each other and never take our safety for granted. The experience had changed us both, making us more vigilant and cautious. Years have passed since that terrifying time, but the memory of those nights in room 314 still haunts me. I often wonder who the intruder was and what their intentions were. The lack of answers leaves a lingering sense of unease. Even now, I find myself double-checking locks and peering into the shadows, always on high alert. The experience taught me that safety is never guaranteed, and sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones we can't see.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe somebody died in room 314 and they're hell bent for other people staying there, or it might have been the person that might have ended up deleting some people in there. You never know. But I figured once they said they couldn't find no DNA fingerprints on that red writing, that made me change my mind on it being a real person. It had to be a ghost. So it seems like a ghost would have the ability to somehow take a photo and send it to their phone. It seems like that's really creepy that they would know that. I don't know how that works. But I was just glad that the college administration people let them move into a different dorm room, because I probably would have been transferring to another college if that kept happening.
Working the night shift at the campus library wasn't something I ever thought would be the source of nightmares. It was supposed to be quiet and peaceful, giving me plenty of time to study. But one night during my junior year, all that changed, leaving me with memories that still haunt me. I had been working at the library for over a year and had grown used to the solitude that came with the late night hours. My shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 2 a.m. Most nights were uneventful, with a few students trickling in and out, cramming for exams or finishing up last-minute assignments. That night, however, was different. It was a chilly November evening, and a heavy fog had settled over the campus, making the usually bustling university grounds eerily quiet. I arrived at the library, greeted by the familiar scent of old books and polished wood. I took my seat behind the front desk, ready for another uneventful shift. Around midnight, the library was almost empty. Only two students were scattered across the large study area, their faces illuminated by the glow of their laptops. I decided to do a quick round to ensure everything was in order. As I walked through the dimly lit aisles, I felt a slight chill, attributing it to the weather outside. Suddenly, I heard a faint rustling sound coming from one of the far corners of the library. My heart rate picked up, but I brushed it off, assuming it was one of the students rearranging their books. However, as I approached the source of the noise, I found the area deserted. The only thing out of place was a single book lying open on the floor. I picked it up and examined it. It was an old, dusty volume of horror stories.
Oh, heck no. I'll be kind of curious and wonder why would an old book of horror stories would just be laying on the floor wide open. Either someone is playing a practical joke on you, or that library might be haunted. I don't know yet, so let's just continue on with the story, see what happens next.
Seemingly eerie given the situation. I placed it back on the shelf and continued my round, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling creeping up my spine. Returning to the front desk, I noticed one of the students packing up to leave. He gave me a polite nod and exited the building, leaving just one student remaining. I settled back into my seat, but the unease lingered. Minutes later, I heard the sound of footsteps echoing through the empty aisles. I glanced at the security monitor, which displayed the library's various sections. The screen showed nothing unusual, but the footsteps continued, growing louder and more erratic. I stood up, my heart pounding, and decided to investigate. As I walked through the rows of books, the footsteps seemed to follow me, always just out of sight. I quickened my pace, my breath coming in short gasps. Turning a corner, I nearly collided with the remaining student, who looked as startled as I felt. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice trembling. He nodded, his face pale. "Yeah, I thought it was you." We both stood there for a moment, listening. The footsteps had stopped, replaced by an unsettling silence. The student glanced around nervously before deciding to leave. He gathered his things and hurried out, leaving me alone in the library. I returned to the front desk, trying to convince myself that it was all in my head. The clock on the wall showed 1 a.m., just one more hour to go. I busied myself with organizing returned books, hoping the activity would distract me from the creeping fear.
It would for a while until you don't have nothing else to put back on the shelves, and then you'll be all paranoid again. Once you get done, clock out and leave it at the library like that student did.
Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging the library into darkness for a few seconds before they came back on. My heart leaped into my throat as I heard a whisper, a faint, indistinct murmur coming from the back of the library. I strained to listen, but the words were unintelligible. Grabbing my flashlight, I made my way towards the source of the whispering. The beam of light cut through the darkness, illuminating the dusty shelves and casting long shadows on the walls. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, as if urging me to follow. I reached the back of the library, where a rarely used staircase led to the basement archives. The whispering seemed to be coming from below. With a deep breath, I descended the stairs, my flashlight flickering as if it, too, was afraid of what lay ahead. The basement was colder, the air heavy with the smell of old paper and mildew. The whispering had stopped, replaced by an oppressive silence. I moved through the narrow aisles, the shelves towering above me like sentinels. As I turned a corner, my flashlight beam landed on a figure standing at the far end of the aisle. It was a man, dressed in an old-fashioned suit, his face obscured by shadows. He stood motionless, his eyes fixed on me. I felt a wave of cold terror wash over me, rooting.
Well, I mean, I've had terror washing over me right at this point because you go down to the basement of a library and all you smell is old mildew off the books. I would have been holding my breath and or just walking out right then and say, wait until morning comes, check it out. But if you continue and you see this, like someone standing at the end of the aisle wearing an old fashioned suit with a weird looking face covered by shadows, I'll be like, nope, I'm out of here.
Me to the spot. The man took a step forward, and I instinctively stepped back. "Who are you?" I managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. The man didn't respond. Instead, he raised his hand and pointed to something on the shelf beside me. I turned to look, and my blood ran cold. It was the same horror book I had found earlier, now lying open on the shelf with a fresh note inside. "You shouldn't be here." I looked back, but the man was gone. The whispering resumed, growing louder and more frantic. I ran back up the stairs, my flashlight casting erratic beams of light as I fled. Bursting into the main library, I grabbed the phone and called campus security, my hands shaking. Security arrived within minutes and searched the basement, but they found no trace of the man or the book. The security cameras showed only me, wandering the aisles alone. They tried to reassure me, but I could see the doubt in their eyes. For the rest of my shift, I stayed near the front desk, my eyes darting to every shadow, every flicker of movement. When my shift finally ended, I left the library, vowing never to work the night shift again. To this day, I can't explain what happened that night. The memory of the man in the basement and the chilling note still haunts me. I transferred to a different college the following semester, hoping to leave the terror behind. But every now and then, I hear whispers in the dark, reminding me that some nightmares never truly end.
Oh, you got that right. Even if you thought you saw a guy in the basement, and then when you get out of there, campus security checks it over and said he wasn't there, and they only saw you, that would definitely creep me out. I'd be like, oh, heck no. I'll definitely work day shift or transfer to another library at a different campus. I'm just glad he did not get assaulted because I know he wouldn't want to work there ever again if that happened. But that would be creepy just seeing that book that you just saw upstairs now in the bottom basement shelving areas saying you shouldn't be here written in it. That would be enough to make anybody go crazy.
Joining Delta Psi was one of the highlights of my sophomore year at college. The fraternity house was an old, stately building with ivy creeping up its brick walls, located at the edge of our sprawling campus. It had a rich history, having been established in the early 1900s. The guys told me that it had character, which was a polite way of saying it was in desperate need of renovation. But I didn't care. I was excited to be part of the brotherhood, and the house, with its creaky floors and dusty corners, had a certain charm. My first few weeks were filled with typical fraternity activities, parties, pranks, and bonding with my new brothers. But I couldn't ignore the strange stories that circulated about the house. It was rumored to be haunted. Older members would share tales of unexplained noises, ghostly apparitions, and objects moving on their own. I laughed it off at first, thinking it was just part of the initiation process to scare the newbies. But as the days turned into weeks, I started noticing things myself. One night, as I was studying in the common room, I heard footsteps above me. It was well past midnight, and everyone else was either asleep or out. The footsteps were slow and deliberate, creaking the old wooden floorboards. I called out, but no one responded. Gathering my courage, I went upstairs to check, but found nothing. The hall was empty, the doors to the bedrooms closed. I shrugged it off, blaming it on the house settling. The minor disturbances continued. Objects I was sure I had left in one place would appear somewhere else. Books fell off shelves for no reason. Cold spots lingered in the air even when the heaters were blasting. My unease grew, but I didn't want to seem like I was losing it. So, I kept my concerns to myself. One evening, a few weeks into the semester, we decided to have a movie night. We all gathered in the dimly lit common room, sprawled out on the worn out couches, and started watching a horror film. As the movie reached a particularly tense moment, the lights flickered and went out. We groaned, thinking it was just a power outage. But then, the temperature in the room dropped suddenly, and we could see our breath in the air. A sense of dread settled over us. Who forgot to pay the electric bill? Jake, one of the seniors, joked, but his voice was shaky. Before anyone could respond, a shadowy figure appeared at the far end of the room. It was tall and indistinct, like a silhouette cut from the darkness.
Okay, right off the bat, that will tell you that all your other fraternity brothers won't pull in any scare tactics to initiate you into their fraternity. This is actually happening. Something is haunting that house.
We all froze, staring in disbelief. The figure moved closer, gliding silently across the floor. Panic set in, and we scrambled for our phones to use as flashlights, but the batteries were inexplicably dead. Is this some kind of prank? I asked, my voice trembling. No, said Alex, another senior, his face pale. This isn't funny. The figure stopped in the center of the room and seemed to look around. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, it vanished. The lights flickered back on, and the room warmed up again. We sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. What the hell was that? Jake finally said, breaking the silence. None of us had an answer. We decided to call it a night, but sleep didn't come easy. Every creak and groan of the old house set my nerves on edge. I kept my eyes on the door, half expecting the shadowy figure to reappear. The next day, we gathered in the kitchen to discuss what had happened. Everyone had seen the figure, and it wasn't the first time. The older members recounted similar experiences, dating back years. They told us about a former resident named Thomas, who had died under mysterious circumstances. According to the legend, Thomas had been pushed down the stairs during a hazing ritual gone wrong. His spirit was said to haunt the house, seeking revenge. As the weeks went by, the haunting intensified. Doors slammed shut on their own, lights flickered, and the temperature fluctuated unpredictably. One night, I woke up to find Thomas standing at the foot of my bed, his face a mask of rage. I couldn't move or scream, paralyzed by fear. He disappeared as suddenly as he had appeared, leaving me drenched in sweat and shaking. We decided to take action. After doing some research, we learned about a local priest who specialized in exorcisms. Desperate, we invited him to the house. He performed a cleansing ritual, chanting prayers and sprinkling holy water in every room. For a while, things seemed to improve. The house felt lighter, the oppressive atmosphere lifted. But it didn't last. A few weeks later, the disturbances returned, more violent than before. One night, as we were sitting in the common room, the fireplace roared to life, flames shooting out and nearly setting the room on fire. We barely managed to put it out, but the experience left us all shaken. We knew we couldn't stay in the house any longer. It was clear that Thomas's spirit was too strong, too angry to be banished. We decided to move out and find a new place to live. As we packed our belongings, we couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I looked back at the house one last time before leaving, hoping to catch a glimpse of Thomas. But the windows were dark and empty, giving no hint of the terror that lay within. The new house we moved into was modern and bright, a stark contrast to the old fraternity house. We tried to put the past behind us, but the memories lingered. Late at night, I sometimes thought I could hear the creak of floorboards and the sound of footsteps. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if Thomas had followed us. We never spoke of the haunting again, each of us dealing with the trauma in our own way. The fraternity continued to function, new members joining and old ones graduating. But the stories of the haunted house persisted, passed down from one generation to the next. I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt, knowing that Thomas's spirit remained trapped, forever tied to the place he had died. And so, the legend of the haunted fraternity house lived on, a chilling reminder of the dark history hidden within its walls.
You just feel bad for because he won't ready to go yet, and yet those fraternity boys that he was with pushed him down the stairs for some ritual, but they went too far. I'm glad that they called in a priest to do like an exorcism to hopefully help him get him out of there. But if these boys that keep graduating and bringing in new members for that fraternity house keep mentioning him, I don't know if that would cause him to return and keep on haunting the place, which I hope he don't. He deserves peace. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more Midnight Nightmare content like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man's Core channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. I said that's a wrap, and have a nice day, y'all.